Hello again, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the Tbd Motorsports Podcast. We are short a few men tonight. Jason Ford was supposed to be our guest, and he wasn't able to make it due to work obligations, and our normal contributor, Scott Seaman, is also not able to make it due to work obligations. But we all know how crazy things are right now, so it's understandable. Hopefully we'll have both of those guys back on next week, but for right now, it's just me, your host, John Ross, with co-host Mike Dollard.
Hello.
So, for starters, anything interesting and/or racing-related going on in your world, Mike? I know you've got a Mustang project car that you're working on.
Yeah, I'm just kind of tinkering on that now. Waiting for the real world stuff to start back up. I haven't really done anything. I'm waiting on a few parts and pieces here and there, and then as soon as I get my fuel system upgrades, we'll go ahead and get it tuned and see how it runs. How about you, John? How's the racing world treating you? How's the car coming?
Yeah, so the B mod is pretty much race ready at this point. We're actually, me and some buddies are going to be doing a private track rental, hopefully this weekend. With all the real racing being shut down, we still are allowed gatherings of 10 people or less. So, kind of skirting the rules a little bit to make that happen. But at the very least, we should be able to shake down the new car and the new motor and see how that's going.
Well, hopefully that works out for you. They've been doing that up here too. They'll kind of skirt the rules. You're allowed, the driver and a couple crew members, depending upon how many teams are in there, to be in the pits and so on and such forth. So it gives those guys an opportunity to shake their cars down and do what they need to do, make sure they're ready. Since once it comes, it's going to hit hard and heavy. You're not going to have time to really think about what the hell's going on.
Yeah, exactly. I think by the time racing does get started up again, nobody's going to have any excuse to not have all the bugs worked out. Hopefully, if all goes well, I think tomorrow I'm going to take the car out, just run it up and down the street in front of the house a couple times and do a basic systems check. And then, it's off to the racetrack to shake it down for real.
You'll have to shoot some videos because we can see how that thing runs. Let us know how you got how different it is from the E mod. I know you've got a little bit more suspension travel in the rear, and a little bit more rear steer in that thing in the B mod versus the E mod. So it'll be interesting to see how you handle it.
Yeah, for sure. We were putting the rear suspension kind of through its paces. Just let the springs hang loose and cycled it to check for binding and all that good stuff. And just to see the amount of travel that it has, and even looking at like the drive shaft yoke where it goes into the transmission, like now we're running an 8-inch yoke where we were running like a 5.5-inch yoke before, and it uses up just about all of that. So it's really going to be different. It's really going to lean over and hike up the left rear a lot more. So I'm excited to see what that feels like.
That'll be interesting.
For sure, yeah. So for people that don't know about your Mustang project, I know that's kind of a dream car for you. Why don't you tell everybody about the car that you bought recently and the mods that you're doing to it and that kind of stuff?
Oh hell, I recently bought a 2003 SVT Cobra 10th anniversary. It was stock when I bought it. I've got a 2.93 pulley for the blower, and then a 4-pound lower crankshaft pulley, which is an increased diameter crankshaft pulley, ready to go. They're sitting on top of my toolbox. I'm just waiting on a fuel system upgrade, injectors, and a Kenny Bell booster pump to put on there. I've got everything else I need to, possibly push somewhere in the neighborhood of 550, 600 horsepower for now through, stock internals, stock blower, and then next season I think I'm probably going to upgrade to a Whipple supercharger, probably a 2.9, probably run about a 3-inch pulley, so hopefully somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 750 for horsepower. Just been something I've always wanted. I've always been a Mustang guy, usually a Ford guy up until recently when all of their vehicles started going to shit. But I've always been a Mustang guy ever since the Cobras came out in 2003. I've said I was going to get one of those, and finally I just saved my pennies, and one came about for the right price, and thought, what the hell, can't turn it down. So made it happen.
Nice. Yeah, that's always exciting to see somebody, especially a friend, finally get sort of the car of their dreams, something that you've been wanting to drive and own for a long time. So I'm excited to see how that turns out.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I'll drive it down there some weekend when we come down to go racing, and maybe we'll go for a ride. Take her out on the track and see what the hell happens. See if we can break something.
Will I take it out on a drag strip or out on the dirt track?
Out on the dirt track.
Yeah, they might let you do that after all the races are over. That'd be pretty interesting. Not very often you get to hear a supercharger out there on the dirt.
It'll scream, that's for sure. I ain't scared.
You know, it's interesting. There's at least one of the asphalt tracks around here, and maybe a couple of the dirt tracks as well. Sometime soon, are introducing a new class. You know, they've had the four banger classes for a long time, but it for a while now, 6-cylinder passenger cars have been really popular, including like the 6-cylinder variations of the Camaro and the Mustang. So they're creating like a Super Six class is what they're calling it, where basically any 6-cylinder car, and it's a very bare bones pure stock type class. Stock DOT tires and basically only safety upgrades allowed. So I'm interested to see how some of those more late model cars make the transition into race cars, considering we've been kind of stuck in the same bubble in terms of the circle track, short track world of, G bodies being more or less the most up to date thing that you're really allowed to race in competitive classes.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see, especially with some of the. I mean, if you look at some of the late model 6-cylinder stuff, I mean, they're putting out some power, even naturally aspirated.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, a lot of those cars are unibodies, so that is also interesting how that's going to work out because we're so used to dealing with full frame cars in the dirt track world. I mean, I guess the 4-cylinder guys have been doing that for a long time, so probably the same
Yeah.
guys that build cages for those cars can, they know how to handle the reinforcements to make that safe and all.
Yeah, I think that's something that those front wheel drive cars, or even just the 4-cylinder guys, with the old Fox body Mustangs and stuff like that. I think that's something they've been honing in on for a number of years now. So I think that should kind of play right into their wheelhouse.
Yeah, definitely excited to see how that's going. I know one of my buddies, Kent Cruzan, I think is how you pronounce it. Sorry if I butchered that, Kent. He's building one of those Super Six cars to go racing on asphalt down in southern Missouri. So I'm actually I'm hoping one of these days we can get him on the podcast. He's dealt with a lot of interesting characters in the Midwest and Mid South racing scene. So and he's got some cool experiences that might be neat to share. So I'm talking to him and working on getting him on here.
That'd be a good time. It'd be interesting to hear about some of the stuff he's seen over the years and so on and such forth.
Um, so for this week, got a couple talking points. There's some big talking points that we're going to kind of intentionally not touch on too much because we just don't really feel like there's anything to be added to those conversations. But the first one I had in mind, trying to keep things, like we said last week, on the positive side. I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you've seen it, Mike. We may have talked about it a little bit in passing. North Wilkesboro Speedway, one of the most historic NASCAR venues, is getting added to iRacing. Dale Earnhardt Jr. and some of his buddies were part of the push to make that happen. They're have in the past helped clean up and clean up the debris and stuff around the track that's been in disuse for well over a decade at this point. So that's pretty exciting to see. What I feel like that could maybe have some major implications going forward for historical racetracks that would otherwise be lost to the past, being able to preserve them in a digital way.
Yeah, I think that is awesome what he rallied for on that. I think that track is probably one of the most iconic tracks in NASCAR. Um, and I just happened to see a tweet that he did today. I recently joined the Tweeter thing just to kind of keep up with some stuff. And they actually have it scanned. They have it laid out. They're hoping for a June release. He showed a screenshot of it, and it looks phenomenal. Um,
Oh, so they actually have like a full screenshot of the full track?
Not the full track. It was the front stretch right at the grandstands with the North Wilkesboro sign and the media box and all of that stuff, and it looked awesome. Um, if you're familiar with iRacing, you know that every track they do looks amazing. It's all laser scanned. It's hard to tell real from sim, if you just glance at it. That's part of the draw to iRacing. But what they've done with North Wilkesboro, as far as cleaning it up, like you said, from just a decade or more of sitting stagnant, is phenomenal. It's mind blowing.
Yeah, I think it's actually pushing what a decade and a half at least. I know they ran some late model races and stuff like that there post NASCAR's involvement, but it was the mid 90s was the last time NASCAR raced there, right? Like 94,
Yeah,
95.
94, 95 is what I was thinking.
It's interesting because that actually predates sort of my interest in NASCAR. It almost predates my existence, actually. I didn't really get interested in NASCAR until about 2003, 2004. So I don't have any memories of North Wilkesboro or watching races there or watching races on TV or anything like that. Did you ever get a chance to watch any of those races live, Mike?
Live, yes, I did. I am that old. Um, I thought North Wilkesboro had some of the probably the most characteristic tracks that NASCAR ran back then. But when they were running at North Wilkesboro, those cars, like we were talking about last week with the setups and everything, those cars were on top of the track. Those guys had to drive the car, so every track looked like it had character. But North Wilkesboro just it stuck out to I think just about anyone who ever watched a race there. It looked like it was just, I mean, elbows up, gritting your teeth. You got white knuckles, and you can say that about a lot of them back then. But these guys looked like they really had to drive that track, and I think that was probably one of my favorite tracks to watch. That and I would have to say probably Richmond.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of in the same vein as Richmond, right? I mean, it's actually shorter than Richmond, closer to like Bristol in length, but without the banking. And I'm assuming that has a lot to do with why, like you said, it was such an elbows up track because they didn't have the banking to lean on. Maybe not as fast a track as Bristol, but perhaps a little bit more technical.
Yeah, I think it was just you had to be technical. You had to have the right mindset. You had to be on top of your game in order in order to succeed at North Wilkesboro. And I think that's what made it so challenging. And I think that's why, if you were to ask a lot of the guys these days, that is probably one of the tracks they would love to see brought back to life.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree that there's a lot of short tracks. Nashville Fairgrounds is another one that I think would be awesome to see come back. Because even just recently, ARCA's been putting on great shows there. Do you think that this is going to lead to a greater trend of seeing a lot of these, shall we say, vintage tracks making a comeback in digital form and kind of weaving their way back into the public consciousness?
I don't think it's going to hurt them any. I think a lot of these vintage tracks have been left dormant for so long that I think anything outside of the age of North Wilkesboro, I think, is probably long gone and will probably never see the light of day again, unfortunately. Um, but on the other hand, who knows? I mean, some of these guys could start. We've heard of people going out and buying up racetracks, old racetracks, and trying to repurpose them for their own private use. And that could happen to any of these vintage tracks. And at some point, iRacing could say, "Hey, can we borrow that for a minute?"
Yeah, it's actually been kind of a recent occurrence around here. There's a couple tracks have been bought up by the same guy. Heartland Park in Topeka, Kansas, was reopened. It's a road course and drag strip. The NASCAR Truck Series and I believe maybe Trans Am and some of the other series, big road racing series, ran out there. Oh, I know the trucks ran there in the '90s, but it's now, well, not literally now, but it's basically now back open. I went to see the NHRA race there last year, which was super cool. And
Yeah, actually,
the same guy that bought that is also bought and is reopening I-70 Speedway in Odessa, just outside Kansas City. Which is what's interesting about that is it was always a paved track, and he's reopening it as a dirt track. So it's going to be a lot different from what I think a lot of people remember it as. But in this day and age when racetracks close a lot more than they open, it's still good to see stuff like that getting brought back.
Yeah, it kind of makes your heart hurt knowing that some of these nice tracks, these tracks that created memories for so many people, whether it be just your local dirt track or, a small asphalt track or even a bigger track like North Wilkesboro, it just breaks your heart to see them sitting in the weeds. I knew Heartland Park in Topeka had reopened. I actually had some tickets for that. I think it was last year or the year before, and I traded them for the Rusty Wallace driving experience at Iowa for my third or fourth time. Not really sure why I did that. Never
Well,
just been
I mean,
really a fan of
anytime you
drag
can be
racing.
driving is better than watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, but that's always a good time. I've done that a few times, and I understand the principle of it. It's really more just to say, yeah, I've done it. It's not going to blow your socks off or anything like that. Somebody who comes from a racing background is more or less going to be disappointed in what you get. But in all honesty, that's something that if you are a race fan, that has got to be on your bucket list. Not to change the subject or anything, but doing something like that has got to be on your bucket list just to get behind the wheel and do something, that you grow up watching. Um, I've been in the dirt cars. You know, I've ran that for a few years, and then to go to this asphalt, that was something I always wanted to try. And I knew the cars were underpowered, and I knew they were kind of a numb setup, a neutral setup. So I knew I wouldn't be able to hit the speeds they're hitting in qualifying in the Xfinity cars or the trucks or anything like that. Probably not even ARCA cars, but it was still quite the experience. Just feeling what that car does, going into the banking and just feeling it in your seat. It's you you can't get that anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. I had the pleasure of doing that same deal with the Rusty Wallace experience down in Memphis, actually, and that was before I ever got a chance to get into a big car and in an actual race. So that was definitely interesting. You're right. They're underpowered and they don't really let you unleash the car. Uh, I mean, you can still get yourself in trouble. I think they were tighter on the reins for us even than normal because the guy right before me actually went out there and wrecked the car. So I mean, they're still race cars even though they're neutered pretty heavily. But yeah, I mean, it's relatively affordable. It's definitely something like you said that I would recommend, especially to somebody who doesn't have previous racing experience. It really gives you we'll give you some more respect for what these guys do on a daily basis, knowing, hey, they're going around that track with, twice as much horsepower as what you're dealing with out there. But,
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
it's interesting because like I said, I've got the experience on the track around 20 other guys on dirt, door to door, wheel to wheel, not knowing what's going to happen in the next corner. But you go out in these cars, and I think it was probably the fact that it wasn't mine. So if I broke it, I knew that I was in trouble. Um, but I don't think I took a breath the entire, I don't know, 12 or 20 laps, whatever I did. I don't think I took a breath at all. I'm fairly certain when I got out, I was gasping for air. Um, but
Yeah,
it,
it's always different driving, when you're driving somebody else's stuff. You're right, there is a different aspect to it.
yeah, I turned down a sprint car ride at the famed Knoxville Raceway. I had a buddy who raced a 410 there, and I turned it down. He said, "Why don't you go out and hot lap this thing?" And I said no, just for the simple fact that I know what they have invested in those cars, and I knew what was in my bank account, and the numbers just didn't line up.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people would call you crazy for that one, but I definitely understand. But have you ever had the opportunity to race somebody else's car or cart or anything to do that?
I have, and I will tell you right now, it did not end well. I uh, I got the chance, my very first dirt modified race. I got the chance to race somebody else's car, and we were in hot laps, mind you, just getting everything warmed up, setting the car up, figuring out where the track was at for heat races, hot laps. And I went out there and I'm just doing my thing, and all of a sudden there's a guy down below me, and he slides up, puts me into the outside wall, moved the entire right side of the car over 6 inches.
Oh man.
We replaced so much stuff between the hot laps and the heat race just to get me back out there for the heat race. Been a Panhard bar, been a spindle, been the center link. We didn't realize it until the feature that it had ended up compromising a right front brake hose. And so by the time I was done with the heat race and I went to set my brake bias for the feature that evening, I stomped on the brakes to see where my pressures were, and it blew out the right front brake hose. Pedal went to the floor. My old man says, get to staging. So I go up to staging with no brakes. I run this entire feature, 20 laps on dirt in a modified with no brakes.
Oh man. Yeah, because people think that because we have adjustable brake bias that that it's like like a drag car where you can turn off one brake and still have the other ones work. But the way that since it's a mechanical linkage that ties both master cylinders together, it doesn't really work that way.
Yeah, it was interesting. I don't remember much of that race because I think I had tunnel vision so bad because I had to focus on what I was doing each and every lap, each and every corner. So, because I didn't have the brakes to rely on. I had to use it all in throttle and steering. And so it was interesting. I don't remember a whole lot about the race aside from, you know, as soon as we started, I knew I was fucked.
Yeah, that's not a good feeling. I've never been in that extreme of a position where I had absolutely no brakes, other than the one time that I think it was actually my very first race in EMOD. My fire extinguisher came loose from under my seat and rolled under the brake pedal. So that was sketchy. But for a whole race, going out there knowing you have no brakes, I mean that just kind of shows the where our heads are at as racers, that we don't always necessarily think logically. Sometimes it's just
No.
you just got to go. You got to get out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's more often than not our balls are bigger than our brains. Um, but no, and I could sit there and I could pump the brake pedal going down the straightaway, and that's what I would do. I would pump the brake pedal going down the straightaway, hoping to get enough something moving, whether it be air or what little bit of fluid was left in there, to get me to be able to whoa up just a little bit. And I think we had one caution that night, and as soon as I saw the caution flag, I thought, oh shit, there is no way I'm going to be able to make this happen. So as soon as I saw the caution flag, I let out and I threw it in neutral. And I let the car coast, and I'm sitting there the whole time just pumping the brakes, pumping the brakes, pumping the brakes, hoping I'm not going to run somebody over. I was able to get it woed up enough, and I pulled it back into high gear and just kind of idled around the racetrack. And everything went okay, but it was still kind of a sketchy deal, and I'm really not sure why I did it.
Well, because race car, right?
Right? Yeah. I mean, any of us could have. I could have said no. I'm not going to go out there with no brakes, but you know, hell, why not?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. that's pretty far up there as far as sketchy things when it comes to
Yeah,
racing. I've heard some
bonehead
stories
moves.
of guys back in the day, like, well, of course, way back in the day, they did all kinds of sketchy stuff that we wouldn't even think about now. But I've heard of guys going out there and having their belts come loose and refusing to pull off, because they were leading or whatever. There's something. There's that tunnel vision, like you said, that helps keep you safe and focused. But then there's the other tunnel vision where all you're thinking about is being competitive and not thinking about being safe. And that goes back a lot to what I was saying last week about how as drivers we need to be aware of that and keep those kind of be a little bit more cognizant sometimes and think about stuff like that, which just goes to show we've all been guilty of it. So
Oh, absolutely. I raced with a guy who, you've got your latches on your steering wheels for your quick disconnect that had broken on his steering wheel when you come out of staging. You go up over a hill and somehow, some way, the latch fell off. It was just a little push button latch. That latch fell out of the steering wheel, and so it was not locked in. And the second lap, he went around, come out of turn two, the steering wheel came off in his hands, and well, at that point, he's wearing his brown pants.
well, hell, Jimmy Johnson pulled that in practice at, like, what was it, Phoenix maybe about 3-4 years ago. So
Yeah,
happens to the best of us, I guess.
yeah, and it was that was before I'd started driving. So every time, after seeing that, every time I got in the car, I'd get the wheel latched on and I'd give it a couple, 3, 4 tugs and make sure it's there.
Yeah, there's an interesting question. So, like, when you're racing, do you have like a ritual that you have to go through when you climb into the car and get belted up, and like a, you know, kind of a pre-flight checklist, so to speak?
Um, One thing I always did, the first thing I always did after I got my belts on, I'd pull my belts tight and then I'd scoop my butt back further in the seat and pull them down just a little bit tighter. And then the first thing I did once I was buckled in is I would always check my brake bias. That was always my go-to thing, and I don't know why. I don't know why it was so important to me, but I had to have them at a certain pressure, front and rear, before I would even back the car out of my pit stall. And I just something I always did. And then after that, it was just, I'm sitting there talking to myself, singing, whatever, just anything to make me forget that I'm about ready to go out and do this.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize. Like, it's such an adrenaline rush, and that's such a big part of why we do it. But at the same time, that can be your biggest enemy. Like, you don't want to psych yourself up. If anything, you have to kind of calm yourself down a little bit. At least for me. Like, I always like to. The one thing I hate more than anything else is like when you're running around rushing, trying to get in the car in time to make it up to the grid before, you know, your heat or your feature or whatever. Like, I always like to be in the car, 10, 15 minutes before, and be belted in, helmet on, visor down or up if it's super hot out, which it often is, and just kind of like, it's almost like a zen, like a meditation thing. You just kind of like empty your mind almost.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I wasn't, 15 minutes ahead of time, but I was in there with plenty of time to spare. I'd sit in there and I'd check my brake bias and I'd tug on my belts a little bit and pull on my steering wheel and just, kind of get a feel of the car. You start to sit in there and you just go into this mindset where you're one with the car, and once that gets interrupted is when the adrenaline starts to kick in, and I think that's a big downfall to a lot of guys as they get out there and they don't allow themselves to just sit there and calm down for a second.
Yep, for sure. Well, we've kind of gotten way, way off topic, but I think it's been some good discussion at least.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I don't. What was our original topic? Oh, that's right, North Wilkesboro.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, and
old
just kind of
track.
the general idea of these old tracks being kind of revitalized in digital form, and whether that has any bearings on the real world, or is it just, I mean, 'cause let's be honest, like the internet, and I'm guilty of this. Hell, I'm nostalgic for things that I never experienced. I'm the guy that goes around with a leather jacket and a mustache listening to Boston. So
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
no, but I'm 25 or what? How old am I? I'm 26. So, so.
We won't judge. But and you're sitting here talking about how these vintage tracks are being revitalized in digital form. Now, my question is, in order to revitalize them in digital form, you have to bring them back to a certain point of essentially being raceable, being scannable, so that they can put it into this sim to be raceable. So
Yeah,
at that
being
point,
being scannable at least, because they can do some kind of digital Botox to smooth out the bumps and whatnot,
right?
and make it. Because I mean, let's be real. Like, I mean, you could probably race pure stocks or street stocks on North Wilkesboro after the cleanup job they did, but you couldn't race a modern cup car or even a modern, late model or something like that on it. It's still going to be too bumpy.
I agree, but in the same breath, does that mean, now somebody has gone through and they've put in the legwork, they put in the time and the effort to clean this place up, you know, could that lead to a revitalizing of it in the real world?
Yeah, and that's kind of what
Could
I
we
was kind
potentially
of
see?
trying to lead into. Um, you're maybe not halfway there with the just a basic cleanup of the grounds and getting the grass out of the cracks and stuff, but you're maybe a quarter of the way there. I mean, you're closer than you have been in the last 10 years. So, obviously running any kind of racetrack is a challenge, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. My thinking on that is if even if you can't turn them into fully functioning racetracks, there's so much history in these places. I really think that there needs to be some kind of grant or some kind of foundation or something. Like if I had unlimited money, I'd start something like that for the preservation of racing history. because there's too many of these tracks that are just rotting into the ground, that people don't even know about.
Absolutely, and some of them, I mean, they are the turning points in history for large sanctions such as NASCAR and you know SCCA and Trans Am, the GT cars. They're huge points in history for these different sanctions, and they're just falling to the wayside. They're crumbling beneath us.
Yeah, and I mean, I try to think of myself as a pretty pragmatic person. I don't think that the money is probably there to bring back all of these tracks. Like, there's a reason why only a certain percent anyway of tracks have survived. But they turn it into a park, turn it into a museum, do something with it. Don't just let it sit there and rot and let everybody forget about what it was and what it meant to people.
Yeah, and but that's the way we've kind of become as a society. Everything's throwaway anymore. Everything's recyclable. Um, you just let it go, and eventually it'll become nothing.
Yeah, yeah, I suppose that's true. I don't know. It's on one hand, I mean, just letting him return to nature is probably what a lot of people would rather see happen. But as motorsports enthusiasts, these places, even for me, like when I never watched one of these races or experienced it in person because I was too young, it still means something to me because the sport is it as much as it's changed, like the heritage of it is so important, and where it came from. And I mean, I consider myself a history buff in a lot of ways anyway, so to lose that, I think would just be it would be a disservice to it would be a cultural disservice, and it would be a disservice to racing fans everywhere.
I agree. And while North Wilkesboro may never have the infrastructure to host another Cup race again, um, like we were saying, something smaller, a pure stock, or even, if they can get it up, repave it, and you can get, a super late model race there or something. Just don't let it go away. And I think that's what's happened to too much of NASCAR's history is it's just gone away, and people forget about it, and they see the present day stuff as what NASCAR is, and that's not it at all.
Well, yeah, I mean, in some ways, I think it's easy to go too far in the other direction and to glorify the past and not appreciate what we have, because I mean, to be honest, there really isn't anything out there like NASCAR right now. I mean, it's still a really exciting thing, and I think that we should be grateful for the fact that as much as we've changed as a society and culturally and stuff, that there's still a mainstream racing series out there that features naturally aspirated V8s that you know spew all kinds of carbon emissions and are noisy and obnoxious and awesome. But yeah, you're right though. The sport has lost touch with its roots, and I would love to see it, get in touch with them more. But at the same time, we've got to appreciate what we have too, because it's always going to change, and like especially with the new next gen car or whatever. I've been saying for a while, NASCAR as we know it is pretty much over. But once they go to the spec chassis and everything. But I don't know. I'm rambling now.
That's right. Nothing wrong with a little ramble. But yeah, I think the spec chassis is going to change the game. Um, in a number of ways, for the good and for the evil, both. Um, but I think that's for another day. That's a pretty deep rabbit hole we could get into.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think we've kind of agreed for long enough on this topic. Um, there was another thing that I was interested in discussing, and I think we can actually kind of tie into it in terms of we've been talking about the evolution of racing. How does it survive in a in a changing culture and changing car culture and all those other good things. One thing that I've found interesting recently is the trend, and it's not super recent, but it's grown recently, and especially for big short track events like the Chili Bowl or the Snowball Derby, and that's pay-per-view broadcasts of big races. I'm interested in discussing and hearing what your thoughts are on whether you think that's a viable way to continue growing the sport and to continue allowing people to access it and watch it, or if you think that's going to lead more down the rabbit hole of it becoming niche and potentially drive away new fans.
I don't think anytime you put it in the mainstream, I don't think it's going to drive away new fans. You're going to bring in new fans. I think there's better ways to do it. Um, you've got your diehard fans, your diehard dirt track fans, your diehard short track fans, your diehard NASCAR fans. You've got and they're all pretty well lumped into one. If you're diehard for one thing, you're either diehard for the others or you're tolerant of it, and you're gonna watch it because that's what you want to see. I think there's other ways they could go about doing it aside from pay-per-view. There's so many different outlets that you can broadcast these things on and bring it into your home for little of nothing. Paying $130 to watch the Chili Bowl or the Dome, the late model race at the Dome in St. Louis. It seems a little excessive to me. If I wanted to pay that kind of money, I'd drive down there and watch it myself, or I'd fly down there and watch it myself. Um, so I think they should broaden their horizons on what they do to broadcast this and bring it to the mainstream. But at the same time, I think they're taking a step in the right direction of getting it into people's homes. People who can't get down there, due to time constraints or just, life in general.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you for the most part on that. What I do think is interesting and the direction that I kind of lean towards in it, I think one of the biggest problems and one of the reasons why everybody's a lot of people are cutting the cord and going away from cable and live TV and the way that people have watched racing historically in the past is how obnoxious commercials are. And if you watch any NASCAR race or any big time race on TV these days, there's just so many damn commercials that it almost becomes hard to watch the racing. And so that's one of the things that I like about pay-per-view is how it reduces the commercial load. And what I think would be really cool to see, I mean, I absolutely agree that utilizing streaming and technology and stuff, like you're saying, giving people more opportunities to more forms of media with which to consume racing is good for the sport. But if we could, or if the the major broadcasting partners could create something where there's a pay-per-view option where you get like commercial free with extra content and stuff, like I would absolutely pay a subscription or even a per race, as long as it's reasonable fee for that benefit. I think that would be awesome.
Absolutely, and I think you're in the same boat with just about everybody else who watches racing or anything of that matter. If you could pay for, like you get your Hulu and your Hulu Plus that cuts down on ads. If you could get your pay-per-view or your pay-per-view Plus, where I'm going to pay $130, I don't want to be interrupted with commercials. I want to see this thing through. I want to, limit the ads, 2 or 3 ads every hour instead of 2 or 3 every 7 minutes.
Right. And I've got to give a big shout out to one of my favorite races, which is the 12 Hours of Bathurst. You know how much I love that track on iRacing, and it's like
that track's the devil.
The track is awesome. It has everything. But anyway, the 12 Hours of Bathurst, they stream it on YouTube for free every year, and that includes all the support class races and all the qualifying and practice and stuff. They do have some commercials, but it's for the track is in Australia, the race is in Australia, so the commercials are all for Australian stuff, and so it's not nearly as obnoxious
I
'Cause
would almost pay for Australian commercials.
yeah, exactly. Like something about an Australian accent just makes everything better.
Right, it makes you happy.
Yeah, there's something they. I mean, there's some aspects of their culture that isn't that great, at least in terms of their.
Everything there can kill you.
Well, yeah, but everything there can kill you, but they also don't allow you to own guns, which is well. Before we get off on that whole tangent,
Yeah, let's not go there.
yeah, let's not go there. But no, uh, Australian motorsport is awesome. Like between V8 supercars, uh, the GT various GT series they have down there, all the cool racetracks they have. Yeah, watch the 12 Hours of Bathurst. Like support that stuff because that's the kind of thing that is awesome for the sport to get people involved is free broadcasts like that anybody with an internet connection can watch.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going with this mainstream stuff. If you want to put it mainstream, make it available to anybody, not just the people who have an extra $100+ burning a hole in their pocket, but make it available to anybody, and you're gonna pick up fans by the handful.
Yeah, I think utilizing this whole new, I mean, it's been going on for a while, but it's exploded in probably the last 5 to 10 years. The whole new final frontier, so to speak, of the internet and social media. Racing in general is so far behind some of the other major sports and brands and stuff in terms of taking advantage of that. I mean, there's a handful of like YouTube channels that are racing related, where it's guys like Hunt the Front or Old Number Seven Garage is one I started watching recently, where it's basically just average people that do racing, kind of like you and I, that document it, with video blogs or vlogs or whatever. That's the kind of stuff that we need to see more of from the top of the sport as well, because content like that, giving some kind of behind the scenes access into the garage and stuff like that. I mean, people would eat that up.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of what society's after now is the behind the scenes stuff. We want to see how it works.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, it's about a personal like feeling like they have some kind of connection. Like that's the whole kind of lie of celebrity is that we feel like we know these people when we really don't,
Right.
without getting too philosophical about it. So it kind of plays into that. But for people like you and I that are interested in the technical side of the sport, getting to see like the literal behind the scenes, like what goes on when they're setting the cars up and how they go about the race weekend, that kind of content is surprisingly absent from modern mainstream racing broadcasts.
Yeah, I'm not the kind of person. I don't care what they do when they're away from the track. That's their time. That's, be normal, be a person. Don't be a media robot like you have to be Thursday through Sunday. I'm interested in the stuff that happens in the garage behind the scenes. With the technical side and what they do in their personal life is none of my business.
Yeah, that's one thing that I find really interesting watching old race broadcasts, and it's stuff that I didn't appreciate because I'm talking as recently as say 10, 15 years ago, like when I first started watching NASCAR, when they were going into the garage after somebody wrecked and they're working on fixing the car to get back out there. They've got cameras stick. I mean, if I knew back then what I knew now, I could have looked up under the wheel well where they're beating on the thing with a hammer and said like, oh, this is broken and that's broken. Like it got in that much detail that you could actually see what was going on up underneath the car with the suspension and stuff. These days,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's the teams that are running the media out of the garage or if the media just assumes that nobody cares about that stuff. But man, what I wouldn't give to see that kind of shot of a modern cup car and be able to compare it and see what's changed as far as the kind of springs that they're running and all that stuff.
I would think it's more on the media side if I'm going to be honest. I think it's more on the media side, not thinking that there's people out there that really want to see that kind of stuff because back when they used to do that, there were things these teams were trying to hide. They were teetering in the gray area. So seeing that kind of stuff, letting their competition see that kind of stuff was kind of a red spot for that kind of for the cars and the teams. And nowadays, everything's so tight tolerance. You can't do this, you can't do that. There's not much gray area left. It doesn't matter what you see under there.
Well, yes and no, because I think you and I both know from our own racing experience that the tighter you make the rule book and the more things that you outlaw specifically, the more valuable that gray area becomes. Although I agree probably that it's less visible, I'd say right now, as tight as they've made the rule book, it almost matters more than ever to be able to hide little secrets like that, because the cars are so close in performance that if you can find, half a tenth, suddenly that's gonna rocket you out there. So I don't know. It's yes and no.
And yeah, you could be onto something. These guys don't want them to see these little extra tenths they've found. So you might be onto something there.
All right. Well, I think we've kind of covered both of the topics that I had in mind. Do you want to do a random racing reference roulette sidebar here?
Let's do it.
All right.
I got nothing better to do.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm running practice laps in the truck at Rockingham. I got nothing better to do.
Well, I'm envious because I set this up with my good mic. Hopefully it sounds better. By the way, people who are listening, if there's any left by this point, hopefully the voice quality is a little bit better. But yeah, let's pull up a random page off of Racing Reference, which is like basically Wikipedia but only for racing, and see what we have to say about it. Ready for this?
I'm ready.
Oh boy, this fits right in with what we were talking about. How about that?
What do you know?
The race that it pulled up is the 1976 Dixie 500 from Atlanta International Raceway. Now, neither of us knew what this was going to be. It was totally random, so we don't have anything prepared to talk about. I'm looking at it. Mike can't see it. Mike, who do you think won the 1976 Dixie 500?
Ooh, 76. You got a lot of big hitters then. Oh.
And I'll give you a hint. It really wasn't one of them.
If I had to guess, Buddy Baker.
He was in the top 5, but he did not win. I'll give you 3 guesses. How about that?
All right. How far off was I?
Okay, how about this? It is a well-known name, but probably not a legendary one. But it was a car that is a really well-known car from that era. Like a team that was a really well-known team.
Let's see. There wasn't very many big-name teams back then.
Yeah, this was actually one of the teams that pioneered the whole idea of corporate sponsorship.
Ouch. Wow, I'm at a loss. I keep wanting to come back to Fireball Roberts for some reason. But I think that's too old for that particular race.
Think
I don't want to say he was in the 50s, maybe early 60s.
Yeah, he died in a crash, right?
Yeah, he did.
At Charlotte?
I believe so, yes. Wow. Shit. I don't know, man. You got me stumped.
Dave Marcus.
No, come on. Not wingtip Dave.
Dave Marcus driving the number 71 K&K Insurance Dodge for Nord Krauskopf, or however you say that. Man, I mean, the top 5, you got Dave Marcus in the K&K Insurance car. You got David Pearson in the Wood Brothers car.
I was going to go with Wood Brothers and David Pearson, but you said it wasn't a huge name.
Yeah, so he's second. And then you got Donnie Allison in the Haas Ellington car, Cale Yarborough in the Junior Johnson car, and then Buddy Baker in the Bud Moore car. I mean, then you got Benny Parsons, and the 7th was Darrell Waltrip in the Dygaard car. You got Neil Bonnet, Sam Summers. That's not a name I'm familiar with, so he must have been kind of a privateer. Bobby Walwack and Bruce Hill, James Hilton, and then probably my favorite driver from that era in 13th, J.D. McDuffie.
That's a name you don't hear very often anymore. I think that's one of them that's kind of fallen into the weeds, kind of like North Wilkesboro did.
Yeah, I would. J.D. McDuffie might be my favorite NASCAR driver of all time. Like, he was the epitome of the privateer, running the car out of your garage kind of racer.
He and Dave Marcus fell into that same mold. I mean, if I watched a Dale Jr. podcast here not that long ago with Dave Marcus, and that is exactly what he was. I mean, he would beg, borrow, and steal what he could to get his car back on the track, but he wasn't about to sacrifice, his beliefs and what he wanted to do to gain the sponsorship.
Yep. Yeah, and I remember that particular podcast as well, because I remember him talking about his time driving the K&K insurance car, that it was like it was one of the few times in his career that he really got on board with a big team, and how it just didn't work out personality wise and everything.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's gotten lost in the shuffle too, with the way NASCAR is headed. Is, if you just don't have those privateers anymore. You've got these smaller teams, but these guys are still, I mean, they're cohering to what they need to in order to make that team work. You don't have these guys out here who just don't give a rat's ass anymore, and I'm going to go out here, I'm going to race, and I'm going to compete. I don't need your money.
Right. So a couple
And
more notables that I wanna bring up from this results list. You got Dale Earnhardt in 19th place. He was driving the number 77 car for Johnny Ray. That's not a car that is typically associated with Dale Earnhardt's career.
no, it's not. Those were early days.
Yeah, for sure. So that must have been one of his first starts, I'd have to wager. And then in 22nd place, you have Terry Bivens in the Walter Ballard car. Now, that is actually a legendary kind of name around here in the Kansas City area. He, as far as I'm aware, I think he actually still races. I think he was racing either an A mod or a B mod here locally recently. But that's one of those guys that has raced just about everything under the sun, up to and including the NASCAR Cup level, that nobody really remembers except for a handful of people around here in the Kansas City area. I shouldn't say nobody. I'm sure lots of people that are connected to racing in some way remember him. I've never raced against him. I've never met him, but I have been at the track at the same time that he was there. And so that's kind of cool to see that, see him on this results list alongside Dale Earnhardt and David Pearson and Cale Yarborough, Buddy Baker, etc.
Yeah, I think it's neat when you can step back and look at results like that, and even, in this day and age, I can sit back and I can look at some of the racing stuff. I've known Brett Moffitt since he was 13 years old, running IMCA sport mods around here. I pitted next to him for I think a year or so, and we'd gotten to know each other pretty good. So it's nice when you can sit back and say, I've experienced that person, I know that person, or I've been in the presence of that person, and you can understand who that person is instead of just what the media wants you to see.
Yeah, for sure. I mentioned earlier kind of the illusion of familiarity that we have with celebrities, but in some cases when it's somebody that you actually know, yeah, it's a complete, or at least have met or interacted with in some way, and that's one of the big things that NASCAR is lacking right now, is they don't have that direct connection to the short track world like they used to, where a guy like Terry Bivens or somebody like that was a local hot shoe, could go out and make the field in the Cup race. So, yeah, I mean, that's awesome that you've had that experience with Brett Moffitt. But just imagine if we brought the Cup world and the short track world closer together to where those kinds of crossovers could happen more often. How many more diehard local racing fans would be would be brought into the to the big time stuff.
Well, I think there you've still got that connection with a lot of these guys. I mean, if you look at Tony Stewart and Clint Boyer and Kyle Larson and Casey Kane and all those guys, they've still got deep ties into your short track, your dirt track stuff. And they show up at a number of events. Around here, I see those guys all the time when it comes to the Knoxville Nationals. Um, it's nothing to see Ryan Newman, Ricky Stenhouse, Casey Kane, Kyle Larson, Tony Stewart, all those guys hanging out in Knoxville. You head over to the Dingus, and who do you see? Oh, hey, look, let's have a beer. It's neat to see those guys outside of what you see on the television. They're completely different. Maybe not so much Tony Stewart, but I think he's kind of one of those last guys you found that wears his heart on his sleeve, that isn't afraid to ruffle feathers outside of Kyle Busch. But
Yeah,
he
but
speaks
I
his
think
mind.
Tony Stewart. I mean, Kyle Busch, yeah, to an extent, but Tony Stewart was. You're right. He's by far the most, or what was kind of like the last vestige of the old school drivers. I remember.
Absolutely.
I loved his interview on Dale Jr.'s podcast, which now we're just becoming like a podcast talking about other podcasts, I guess.
Right. Maybe we're
but
starting something.
but to be fair, I mean they've got Dale Jr. Like, what do we've got? You know.
Hey, we got Jason Ford coming up, okay?
Yeah, I mean that's true. Um, we've got the most interesting last names in the business. Not me, but the rest of you guys.
Definitely Scott. Scott's got that one nailed.
Yeah. I'm really surprised we don't give you more shit for your last name.
I probably wouldn't understand it, right?
I guess too big of a word.
Yeah, I'm too stupid.
I don't know if that's ironic or the exact opposite of ironic.
I'm not sure.
But yeah, anyway,
You're
Tony
using big
Stewart
words now.
Tony Stewart was talking about like the code of ethics and it's funny to hear him talk about that in a way because we know how much of a hard-nosed, kind of aggressive driver he was. But in the same way, there was a way that he went about that was consistent with the way that the guys back in the day used to kind of enforce
They were
the driver's
self-policing.
code.
They were self-policing back then, and everybody knew it. Everybody knew, hey, you rub me, I'm going to rub you back. You do this, I'm going to do it right back. And odds are I'm going to do it worse.
Yeah.
And that's what made NASCAR what it was. That's what drew people to it, was the fact that there were these rivalries, these deep-seated rivalries on the track. But you get them off the track, and these guys were best buddies. They were out hunting and fishing and going to birthday parties and all of this stuff. They left it on the track. And you just don't see that anymore. You don't see them leave it on the track. You don't let it be a rivalry on the track. After the race is over, they take to Twitter, they take to Facebook, they take to Instagram, whatever, and that's where the majority of it happens. They turn into keyboard warriors, and I want to see this stuff on the track. I want to see it end at the racetrack.
Speaking of which, what is the best and or the worst fight you've ever seen at a racetrack? And I already know exactly what mine's going to be, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
Personally, like when I've seen in person,
Yeah.
I watched
You don't have to name the people if they're
I'm not going to say any names because one of the guys involved is a really big dude, and I know he's not listening, but at some point he may actually stumble across this, so I don't want him to kill me. But I was watching a hobby stock race, and it was two brothers, and they're both very big guys. One drives, and the other one was pitting for him. And I don't think they needed a jack because they could probably just lift it up and change the tire that way. That's how big they were. But one guy had spun out, we'll call him Guy A and Guy B. Guy A was the driver, the big dude driver. Guy B was a very small man, and he probably had no business coming up to Guy A's pit guy. But they'd gotten together in a race and in the feature, and this little guy, Guy B, had come up to Guy A's pit guy and started running his mouth, and he hit him. He hit Guy A's pit guy with a half-inch drive breaker bar across his head.
Man, that's assault with a deadly weapon right there.
It was a solid hit. No, I can assure you, it there was no deadly anything going on until guy B or guy A's pick guy got a hold of this guy B, which was a very small man. He probably had pedal extensions, and guy A's pick guy basically wadded this dude up and threw him in the garbage can. For lack of better terminology, he knocked the fucking snot out of him after he got clobbed upside the head with a half-inch drive breaker bar. I mean, I was standing probably 15 feet away from guy A's pit guy, this big burly dude, and I heard the impact. You know, it was just kind of a boom. And I turned and looked, and everybody started yelling. I turned and looked, and this dude, I kid you not, without batting an eye, he turns around and he grabs a hold of guy B, this little feller, and lifts him up off the ground and just starts to beat the hell out of him. I mean, I can attest. I work on cars. I've had tools hit me in the head. I've smacked my head on hoists, and it's all pretty solid. And I can assure you, if somebody come up to me full swing and smacked me upside my dome with a half-inch drive breaker bar,
Oh yeah, you'd be out cold.
I would be, yes, I would probably be dead where I lay. My small brains would come trickling out of my ears, and that would be the end of that. But this guy, no, he just turned around real slow and somber, kind of like it was very reminiscent of Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. He just kind of turned around, grabs a hold of this little dude, lifts him up, and just starts knocking the shit out of him.
I mean, now I'm picturing Eeyore beating the shit out of somebody, and I'm like, that.
Right, that's not right. You've ruined my childhood.
I'm beating your ass, but I'm so depressed about it.
Right. God damn it, little man.
Well, anyway, that's completely the opposite end of the spectrum of what I was thinking of as far as worst fight, and that it was just not really. It wasn't a good fight at all. I was at Gateway for the John West Townley versus Spencer Gallagher throwdown.
That was not. Well, that was literally a throwdown.
Oh yeah,
but that was like mud wrestling.
It was mud wrestling on asphalt and without, the assets that make mud wrestling interesting.
Right.
Although I mean Spencer. Let's be honest, Spencer Gallagher's got to be like at least a C cup.
Yeah, he's fairly well endowed up there.
But it was funny because the sight lines to that track are not great. Although it's still a pretty cool track that I definitely recommend going to races there if you're in the area. But I couldn't really tell from far away just how bad it was. I was excited that there was a fight going on, but then when they fell down and just started kind of hugging, I was like, "Is this what?" I mean, no, like it just got awkward.
Yeah, I think that will probably live in infamy with any sort of truck series throwback thing. If somebody goes back in the truck series and makes a montage, that's going to be right in there.
Yeah, you got Chicken Boy, and you got you got John Rex Weekly, and then you got Spencer, Party Like It's 1999 Gallagher.
Right.
But man,
yeah, that was. I think everybody can relate to say that was quite possibly the worst fight anybody's ever seen.
Indeed. All right. Well, I think we're about out of time for tonight. Any closing remarks? Anything you want to leave us with, Mike?
I don't have any words of wisdom tonight. I'm actually drawing a blank. I'm kind of off my game this evening. So.
Well, like I said, we're down on horsepower a little bit here. We got a misfire, a cylinder that's not lighting. So hopefully
I don't think that cylinder ever lights.
Well, yeah,
Sorry, Scott.
But we struggled through as best we could, and hopefully we provided some interesting insight. By all means, drop us some comments or suggestions or whatever. If you're interested in coming on the show, even if you're not, a big celebrity, if you've got a topic that you want to talk about or whatever, let us know. And thank you to everybody who has giving us feedback and listen to these episodes. We're gonna keep doing them. I mean, even if nobody's listening, we're having a good time. So
Yeah,
whatever.
I think it's fun. One of these days we'll look back and say, "Hey, look what I did."
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, hopefully next week I'll have a little bit of a report to give on the shakedown of the B mod, and also my I might do a little feature on my hot rod lawnmower that I'm building.
Ooh, I'm excited about that one.
And of course, we'll have Jason Ford on to talk about some go-kart stuff, the great debate between slicks and treads.
Ooh,
And anyone who knows Jason or me knows what side we fall on that argument. But
them's fighting words.
oh yeah, that's a little bit of a North versus South thing too.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Scott and I have both had quite a bit of experience with the slick side of it, and you and Jason with more treads.
No,
So,
let's not give away let's not give away anything yet.
oh, we're not going to. We're gonna gang up on each other. This is gonna be like big guy and little guy fight. So, knock down, drag out.
Yeah, well, I mean, you and Jason both have the height and reach advantage. I think me and Scott probably have the. Well, I don't know. Let's not go there.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks again. Thank you, Mike, for taking the time out of your schedule to do this, and thanks to anybody who happened to listen this far. And yeah, I hope you all have a good week.
Later.